You know that feeling, the one that can just completely steal your peace.
Oh, yeah.
Like that knot in your stomach when you see someone else, maybe online, living what looks like your dream life.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's closer to home. That sharp, like, stab of unease when a relationship you really value feels threatened, even a tiny bit.
Yeah, that insecurity spike.
Exactly. That uncomfortable comparing, the churning insecurity, maybe fear of loss. It often just boils down to jealousy, doesn't it? Or envy.
It really does. And yes, it can feel like it's just completely hijacking your inner calm. It's a deeply human experience, isn't it?
Seems like it.
These feelings, they can feel so overwhelming sometimes. They keep us focused outward, right, on what others have. Yeah. Or we get trapped inward, wrestling with these perceived threats, or, our own sense of just not being enough.
Yeah, that not enough feeling is powerful.
They are definitely powerful disruptors. They really get in the way of a peaceful state.
Absolutely. And that feeling, that exact disruption is what we're really diving into today. We've gathered, a whole stack of fascinating material. We've got research from psychology looking specifically at this really powerful link between self-compassion and how we experience jealousy.
Right.
And alongside that, articles that explore what it actually means to cultivate states like gratitude and contentment.
Yeah, moving beyond just managing the negative.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive, pulling from all these sources, is to really unpack the nature of these, complex emotions.
Understand why they're so good at ruining our peace.
Yes. Why are they so effective? And crucially, extract the most actionable, insightful nuggets the material offers on how we can navigate them.
How to manage their impact.
Right. And actively build a more stable, maybe more peaceful inner world.
That's the goal. And this deep dive, it's really crafted for you, the listener, based on the valuable information you brought to the table.
Yeah, think of us as your guides here. We're exploring these ideas together, digging into the heart of what drives these feelings.
And hopefully illuminating some potential paths through the turmoil they can create.
Let's really unpack this green-eyed monster and its cousins, like envy.
Let's do it.
All right, so let's start with jealousy itself. It's such a loaded word, isn't it? Often conjures up images of, intense drama or really painful insecurity.
It does.
What do the sources tell us about its fundamental nature? Where does it actually come from?
Well, the material describes jealousy primarily as a response to perceived threats.
Perceived threats, okay.
Threats to a valued relationship. Now, it can show up in different contexts, sure, but it's most prominently discussed, in romantic relationships.
It makes sense.
Yeah, where the threat is often seen as coming from a partner's involvement, and this is key, whether it's real or just imagined with a rival person.
So it doesn't even have to be real.
Not necessarily for the feeling to ignite. The sources really highlight that romantic jealousy is, frequent, and often an intense problem within relationships.
Yeah, I can see that.
And the potential outcomes it can contribute to, things like separation or divorce. They're recognized as some of the most stressful life events anyone can face.
Wow.
So that tells you something about the sheer weight this emotion carries.
It certainly does. It really strikes at the core of our connection with others, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Is there a biological angle, an evolutionary layer to this feeling?
The sources do touch on that, yeah. An evolutionary perspective. The idea here is that romantic jealousy might have evolved as a kind of internal alarm system.
An alarm system? How so?
Well, think about ancestral environments. Maintaining important social bonds, reproductive bonds, that was crucial for survival.
Right. Safety in numbers, continuation.
Exactly. So jealousy, from this viewpoint, it serves to alert an individual to potential threats to that crucial bond. And it prompts them to take action.
Action like what?
Things to prevent abandonment. This could involve, vigilance, being more watchful, or protective behaviors, or maybe efforts to reaffirm the relationship, make it stronger.
Yeah.
It's seen through this evolutionary lens as a mechanism that could have increased reproductive success, survival chances, basically by safeguarding those key relationships.
So there might be this sort of hardwired element, a primitive alert system going off.
Possibly. To some extent.
But it clearly operates way beyond simple survival today. It gets complicated. The sources also mention a social cognitive theory. How does that broaden our understanding?
Right. The social cognitive perspective adds crucial complexity. It moves beyond just that biological imperative, that basic alarm.
Okay.
And it emphasizes the role of cognitive appraisals, how we think about it.
Cognitive appraisals, so our interpretation.
Precisely. This means jealousy isn't just a purely automatic reaction like a reflex. It involves how we interpret the situation unfolding. We're not just responding blindly to a threat. We're actively evaluating it.
Evaluating it how?
Well, this evaluation includes assessing things like, how much do I actually value the rewards I get from this relationship? What's the perceived value or threat posed by this rival? And importantly, how does this whole situation challenge aspects of my own self-concept, my self-esteem?
So it gets personal, tied to our sense of self.
Deeply personal. Our own beliefs, our insecurities, our history, our interpretations, they heavily shape the jealousy we actually experience. This helps explain why different people can react so differently to very similar situations.
That's a really powerful distinction, isn't it? The situation itself versus our internal story about the situation.
Huge difference.
It suggests we might have more agency, more control than we sometimes think.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
If we can work with the interpretation.
Now, the research you looked at, it also breaks down romantic jealousy into different categories, which I found really helpful. Can you explain those for us?
Absolutely. Yeah, the study references Bunk's concept, which distinguishes between several types. Now, there's also something called preventive jealousy that's more about behaviors to stop your partner interacting with rivals.
Okay, like trying to control things?
Kind of.
Yeah.
But the research we're focusing on really zeroes in on two main types, reactive and anxious jealousy.
Reactive and anxious. Okay.
Yeah, because they're seen as more distinct in their nature and, crucially, their impact on relationship dynamics.
All right, let's take reactive jealousy first. What defines that one?
Okay, reactive jealousy is characterized primarily as the emotional component. It's that intense, negative emotional response you experience when a partner engages in behaviors that are perceived as unfaithful.
Like what kind of behaviors?
Things like, maybe kissing someone else or flirting intensely with another person, something tangible you witness or hear about. The sources describe this as potentially a more rational, maybe understandable reaction because it's triggered by an actual specific perceived threat to the relationship that seems to be happening right then and there.
So it's the immediate pang, that surge of difficult feeling in the moment?
Exactly. That visceral emotional punch in response to something apparently happening.
Got it. Okay, what about anxious jealousy then? How is that different?
Anxious jealousy shifts the focus much more to the cognitive realm, your thoughts.
Right.
This type involves worrying a lot. Worrying extensively about a partner's potential cheating, maybe generating these cognitive images or scenarios of infidelity in your head.
Kind of like playing mental movies.
Exactly like that.
Right.
It's characterized by persistent worry, lots of suspicion, rumination, just dwelling on it.
Okay.
And a really key point here is that anxious jealousy can occur even without any potential rival or specific triggering situation being present at all.
Wow, okay, so it can just spin up on its own.
It seems so. It's driven more by internal insecurities, maybe patterns of distrust, fearful thoughts, rather than by an immediate external event that just happened.
That distinction feels absolutely critical. Reactive is a response to something perceived externally happening now. Anxious is more of an internal state, this cycle of worry, often kind of independent of what's actually going on.
Precisely. And the sources frame this almost like a continuum. Reactive jealousy, in some contexts, might be seen as a more healthy or rational response to what looks like a genuine threat signal.
Okay.
However, that preventative jealousy we mentioned, taking steps to control a partner's interactions, and especially anxious jealousy, they're described as generally more unhealthy and problematic.
Why problematic?
Because of their potential for unfounded suspicion, the distress they cause, and potentially leading to controlling behaviors. The study specifically focused on reactive and anxious types because they are more clearly defined psychologically and have these distinct links to individual well-being and relationship outcomes.
And this brings us right back to our starting point. How do these different types of feelings actually disrupt our peace?
Well, just thinking about those definitions, you can almost trace the pathway, right?
Yeah.
Reactive jealousy is defined by strong, often overwhelming negative emotions. Anger, fear, sadness, insecurity. These are inherently turbulent states. They feel bad.
Right, not peaceful at all.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And then anxious jealousy, it's characterized by that persistent worry, the suspicion, the intrusive thoughts.
Yeah.
It keeps the mind in this constant state of high alert, of distress, even when there's no immediate obvious danger.
Like you can't relax.
You really can't.
Yeah.
Neither state allows for calm or presence or stability. They pull your attention away from the present moment, don't they? And they fill it with negativity, either stemming from that intense emotional reaction or from that continuous loop of fearful thoughts.
So if the goal here is to find more peace, we We clearly need strategies, ways to maybe dial down the intensity of those reactive responses.
Yeah, take the edge off.
And significantly quiet that persistent gnawing worry of the anxious type.
Definitely need to address that loop.
And according to the research we looked at, this is exactly where cultivating self-compassion becomes incredibly powerful. So how is self-compassion actually understood in these sources? What is it?
Okay, so self-compassion is introduced as a really vital emotion regulation strategy.
Emotion regulation, okay.
Its primary function, as described in the material, is to help individuals transform negative feelings about themselves.
Which can easily come up with jealousy.
Oh, absolutely. Feelings arising from perceived failure, inadequacy, vulnerability, transforming those into positive feelings. Feelings of kindness, understanding, and acceptance directed squarely towards yourself.
So it's more than just, being nice to yourself. It sounds more specific.
It is more specific. It's a particular way of relating to your own suffering, your own perceived shortcomings. It's about actively treating yourself with the same warmth, the same understanding, the same patience you would naturally offer to a close friend who's struggling or feeling inadequate.
Treating yourself like a friend. That's a helpful image.
Isn't it? And the sources strongly associate self-compassion with a really wide range of psychological benefits, healthier outcomes.
Like what?
Things like enhanced psychological well-being generally, greater resilience when things get tough, and importantly for this discussion, higher relationship satisfaction.
Higher relationship satisfaction. Interesting.
Yeah, it's presented as this sort of overarching construct composed of 3 pairs of opposing components.
Okay, but what are those?
There's self-kindness versus self-judgment. There's a sense of common humanity versus feeling isolated. And there's mindfulness versus getting totally over-identified with your negative thoughts and feelings.
Wow, okay. So it's multifaceted. It involves how we treat ourselves, definitely. How we see ourselves in relation to other humans.
Right, not alone in our struggles.
And how we relate to our difficult emotions, like being mindful instead of getting swept away.
Exactly, it covers all those bases.
Okay, so with that definition in mind, what was the central hypothesis the study set out to test regarding self-compassion and jealousy?
The core hypothesis was pretty straightforward, that self-compassion would be negatively associated with romantic jealousy.
Negatively associated, meaning more self-compassion, less jealousy.
Exactly. In simpler terms, the researchers predicted that individuals who score higher on measures of self-compassion would report lower levels of both reactive and anxious romantic jealousy.
Okay, makes sense. And what did their research actually find? Did the hypothesis hold up?
Yes, it did. The study, which involved 185 German adults who were all in romantic relationships, it provided clear support for that hypothesis. The findings demonstrated that self-compassion does significantly predict both reactive and anxious jealousy.
So it wasn't just one type, it was both.
Both types. Higher levels of self-compassion were indeed associated with a reduced propensity to experience romantic jealousy across the board.
That is a really significant finding, isn't it? It suggests that cultivating kindness and understanding toward yourself isn't just, good for you in a vacuum, but it actually impacts how you experience these really challenging relational emotions, like jealousy.
Absolutely. The implication here is incredibly powerful. Treating yourself with warmth, with acceptance, especially in those moments where you might feel vulnerable or insecure or threatened within your relationship, it seems to act as a kind of buffer.
A buffer. I like that.
Yeah. It appears to mitigate the intensity of that immediate negative emotional reaction, the reactive jealousy.
Takes the sting out a bit.
Seems to. And it also seems to reduce the likelihood or maybe the severity of getting caught in those persistent anxious, suspicious thought loops. The anxious jealousy. It seems to provide this internal sense of security and acceptance that makes those external threats feel less overwhelming, maybe less catastrophic.
Can you maybe paint a picture for the listener? How might this actually play out in a real-life scenario they might recognize?
Sure, let's try. Let's consider that common scenario. You're at a party, maybe, and your partner is having a really lively, perhaps kind of extended conversation with someone new. Looks like they're really hitting it off.
Okay, yeah, I can picture that little pang.
Right. Now, if your self-compassion is low, your inner monologue might get incredibly harsh, really fast.
Like what?
Like, oh, they're funnier than me, or my partner must find them more interesting. I'm clearly not good enough. What if they leave me? It can quickly spiral into intense feelings of inadequacy, fear, anger. That's the reactive jealousy hitting hard, right?
Yeah, that downward spiral.
And you might catastrophize, thinking about what this single interaction means for the whole future of the relationship.
Okay, so that's the low self-compassion route. What about with higher self-compassion?
Okay, same situation, partner chatting away. But if you've cultivated higher self-compassion, when that initial pang of insecurity or threat arises, your inner voice might respond really differently.
How so?
Well, instead of that harsh self-judgment, you might internally acknowledge the feeling. Perhaps something like, okay, I'm noticing a feeling of insecurity right now. This is uncomfortable.
Just noticing it, not judging it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You treat that feeling with kindness, recognizing that, hey, it's normal to feel vulnerable sometimes in relationships. This is a human feeling. You might gently remind yourself of your own worth, maybe the strength of your connection with your partner, separate from this one moment in time. This internal self-soothing, this non-judgment. It can significantly lessen the intensity of that immediate emotional reaction.
So it stops the spiral.
It helps prevent getting lost in that spiral of negative self-talk and fear that fuels reactive jealousy. And then, for anxious jealousy, let's say later you find yourself dwelling on that interaction.
Right, replaying it.
Replaying it, generating suspicious scenarios. Self-compassion would help you recognize those thoughts as, well, products of worry. Perhaps labeling them gently, like, there's that anxious thought again, rather than immediately believing them hook, line, and sinker, and fueling a cycle of suspicion.
So you're less likely to get carried away by the kind of cognitive drama.
That's the idea. You create some distance from it.
That makes so much sense. It's like creating a different internal environment, a different way to process these challenging triggers, whether they're external or just internal worries.
A more resilient internal environment.
Yeah. Now, the study also went deeper, didn't it? It looked at how self-compassion achieves this effect by examining mediating factors. What were the potential pathways they explored?
Right. They specifically investigated two potential mediators: anger rumination and willingness to forgive.
Anger rumination and willingness to forgive.
The idea was to see if self-compassion reduced jealousy because it reduced rumination or because it increased forgiveness, or maybe both.
Yeah.
Trying to find the mechanism.
Okay, let's start with anger rumination. How do the sources define that, and how is it thought to link to self-compassion and jealousy?
Okay, anger rumination is described as this tendency to really focus your attention specifically on angry moods. It involves kind of spontaneously reliving moments when you felt angry.
Going over it again and again.
Exactly. And engaging in this repetitive, often intrusive thinking about the causes, the circumstances, the consequences of those anger episodes. It's really dwelling on the anger.
Okay, I get that. So how does it connect?
Well, the sources point out a pretty logical connection. Self-compassion is generally negatively related to rumination overall.
Makes sense.
Right? By being kind to yourself, not getting totally carried away by negative feelings, you're just less likely to get stuck in those repetitive thought loops about difficult experiences.
Okay.
On the flip side, anger is a very prominent component of jealousy, especially that reactive emotional jealousy.
Right, that flash of anger.
Yeah. So it was hypothesized that anger rumination would be positively related to jealousy. Dwelling on the anger associated with a perceived threat would likely just amplify and prolong the jealous feeling.
So the thinking was, less self-compassion might mean you get more stuck in anger about perceived threats, which in turn fuels the jealousy. Got it.
That was the hypothesis.
Okay, what about the other one? Willingness to forgive.
Okay, willingness to forgive, in this context, is understood as the process of transforming negative feelings towards someone who has hurt you or, transgressed against you, transforming those into more neutral or even positive feelings.
Letting go of resentment.
Pretty much. Letting go of resentment, bitterness. The sources note that willingness to forgive is strongly and negatively correlated with anger rumination.
Ah, okay, so they're kind of opposites.
In a way, yeah. People who are more willing to forgive tend to ruminate less on anger.
That makes intuitive sense. Forgiveness feels like the opposite of holding on to those angry thoughts. Now, how did the study find these mediators actually functioned in the relationship between self-compassion and the different types of jealousy?
Right. This is where the findings offer a really specific mechanism, particularly for reactive jealousy. The study reported that the effect of self-compassion on reactive jealousy was partially mediated by willingness to forgive.
Partially mediated. Can you break that down a bit more for us? What does partial mean here?
Sure. It means that while self-compassion definitely has a direct effect on reducing reactive jealousy.
Okay, it works directly.
Yes. But part of why it does this, part of the pathway, is because self-compassionate people tend to be more willing to forgive.
Ah, okay.
So the pathway looks something like this. Higher self-compassion is associated with a greater tendency or capacity to forgive. And this increased willingness to forgive is, in turn, associated with experiencing less intense negative emotional responses, lower reactive jealousy when you're faced with a perceived relationship threat.
So the self-compassion helps you forgive, and the forgiveness helps manage the emotional reaction.
That's how it seems to work. When that intense emotional reaction of reactive jealousy hits, self-compassion helps you access forgiveness, which then helps diffuse or lessen the severity of the emotional turmoil.
Okay. So it's not just about being kind to yourself in isolation. It's that this kindness enables you to approach the situation or your partner's perceived transgression with a greater capacity for forgiveness. And that forgiveness helps manage the intense emotional fallout. That connection feels really significant, and it ties into that clinical idea mentioned in the source, right? That decision-based forgiveness might be effective for reactive jealousy.
Exactly.
You make a conscious choice to forgive, and your self-compassion supports that choice.
Precisely. Self-compassion fosters the inner state, the inner resources that make forgiveness more accessible, more possible. However, the findings were different when they looked at anxious jealousy. The study reported that no significant mediation was found for the effects of self-compassion on anxious jealousy via either anger rumination or willingness to forgive, at least not in their main statistical model.
That's surprising. I mean, I, and probably many listeners, would have thought anger rumination, dwelling on angry thoughts, would be a major factor in anxious jealousy, which is all about worrying and thinking repetitively about potential threats.
It is quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like we discussed, there are logical connections, right? And established links between self-compassion and rumination and jealousy in other contexts.
Yeah.
But in this specific study's model, anger rumination and similarly willingness to forgive, they just didn't statistically explain how self-compassion reduces anxious jealousy.
So what does that suggest?
Well, it suggests that while self-compassion still effectively reduces anxious jealousy, remember, that significant direct effect was found for both types.
Right, it still works.
It still works. But it might be doing so through different psychological pathways than the ones they tested here. Or perhaps its direct effect on those anxious thoughts and fears is just particularly strong, maybe more independent of forgiveness or this specific measure of anger rumination.
So the direct buffering effect might be the main thing for anxious jealousy.
That's what this study seems to imply, yeah. The direct buffering effect of self-compassion on anxious thinking and fear might be the dominant mechanism there.
Fascinating nuance. Okay, so self-compassion has a direct effect reducing both types. But for the emotional, reactive type, that willingness to forgive is a key piece of the puzzle explaining how it helps.
Seems to be.
For the cognitive anxious type, it seems to be working through maybe other channels or just directly on the thought processes themselves.
That's what the data suggests.
Now, to dig even deeper into those mechanisms, the study also did an exploratory analysis looking at the specific components of self-compassion, right? Those subscales like self-kindness, mindfulness, isolation.
Yes, exactly. They examined how the different opposing components like self-kindness versus self-judgment related to each type of jealousy. This analysis gives us a more granular view, a finer picture, of which specific aspects of self-compassion seem most relevant for tackling each type of jealousy.
Okay, so what did they uncover when they broke it down by those subscales?
All right, so for reactive jealousy, that intense emotional response.
Yeah.
The self-compassion subscale most strongly related to lower levels was mindfulness.
Mindfulness, again, it keeps coming up, doesn't it, in relation to well-being?
It really does.
How does mindfulness specifically help with intense emotional reactions like reactive jealousy?
Well, mindfulness as a component of self-compassion here, it's about maintaining a balanced perspective on difficult experiences, on suffering. It involves paying attention to painful thoughts and feelings without becoming overly identified with them, without getting completely swept away by them. Yeah. So when you're hit by that intense wave of emotion characteristic of reactive jealousy, the fear, the anger, the insecurity, being mindful allows you to observe the feeling as just a feeling, a temporary state, rather than being consumed by it.
It's like watching a storm from the shore instead of being tossed about in the waves.
That's a perfect image for it. This ability to step back, to observe, seems crucial for reducing the intensity and the grip of that reactive emotional response.
That's a powerful image, watching the storm from shore. It really sounds like mindfulness creates that crucial bit of space, doesn't it, between the trigger and the overwhelming reaction.
Exactly. Space to breathe, space to choose a response.
Now, what about for anxious jealousy, that persistent worrying, the cognitive side?
Okay, for anxious jealousy, the exploratory analysis found that the subscales isolation and self-kindness were most strongly related to lower levels.
Isolation and self-kindness.
Right. Isolation is the opposite of common humanity. It's that feeling of being fundamentally separate or disconnected from others in our suffering.
Feeling like you're the only one.
Yeah. And self-kindness, that's the practice of actively soothing and comforting yourself rather than being harshly self-critical when you feel bad.
So feeling less isolated, more connected to common humanity, and being actively kind to yourself helps quiet the anxious, suspicious thoughts.
The implication from these results is yes. If you feel connected to others, if you understand that difficult feelings and insecurities are just part of the shared human experience, less isolation, more common humanity,
Right.
you might be less prone to those paranoid, suspicious thoughts that really fuel anxious jealousy. You don't feel uniquely threatened or uniquely inadequate.
That makes sense.
And self-kindness, actively offering yourself comfort and understanding when you feel insecure or worried, that directly counters the self-critical, fearful internal state that can amplify anxious rumination about potential infidelity. Soothing yourself seems to really calm the anxious mind.
The sources also mentioned common humanity and mindfulness appearing applicable for cognitive jealousy, too, but noted the pattern wasn't perfectly consistent.
That's correct. While aspects like recognizing common humanity, I'm not alone in feeling this, and maintaining mindfulness of thoughts, this is just a thought, not reality, are logically relevant to managing anxious cognitive jealousy.
Yeah.
This study did note that the statistical pattern across all the components wasn't entirely uniform when comparing both reactive and anxious types directly.
Why might that be?
Well, as the study authors point out, it's probably not entirely unexpected because, as we've discussed, reactive jealousy is seen more as that immediate emotional response to a perceived event.
Right, the reaction.
Whereas anxious jealousy seems more rooted in a cognitive style, maybe a disposition towards suspicion. They are distinct in important ways, even if they're related, and both fall under jealousy.
Speaking of how they differ and relate, how do these types of jealousy and the role of self-compassion in managing them connect to overall relationship satisfaction? The sources discuss this, and there seemed to be a slightly counterintuitive point in there.
Yes, it's a key nuance the research brings to light, and it's worth unpacking carefully. On the one hand, it's pretty clear. Greater anxious jealousy is consistently associated with lower relationship satisfaction.
That makes perfect sense.
It does, right. Constant suspicion, worry, maybe potential controlling behaviors stemming from anxious jealousy.
Yeah.
That's corrosive. It eats away at trust and intimacy.
Definitely.
However, and this is the counterintuitive bit, the sources note that some research has found a positive association between greater reactive jealousy and higher relationship satisfaction.
Wait, higher reactive jealousy linked to higher satisfaction? That really does sound backwards. Why on earth might that be the case?
Well, the speculation offered in the material is that in some contexts, a partner might interpret reactive jealousy, that immediate emotional display of upset or fear when the relationship feels threatened, as a sign of intense caring.
Like you care enough to get upset.
Exactly. A sign of investment, of love. It demonstrates that you value the relationship enough to be distressed by a potential threat. The sources even suggest, maybe controversially, that it might sometimes be intentionally induced by one partner just to gauge the other's level of caring.
Wow, okay. That's complex.
It is. And this poses a really interesting question in light of the self-compassion findings, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, if self-compassion reduces reactive jealousy, as this study shows,
Right.
and reactive jealousy is sometimes seen as this sign of caring linked to satisfaction,
Right.
wouldn't being self-compassionate potentially lead to lower relationship satisfaction for your partner because you're showing less of that intense reaction they might be looking for?
Right. If that's the signal they're interpreting as love or commitment, it's a bit of a paradox.
It seems like one initially. But the sources immediately clarify the broader picture, which is overwhelmingly positive for self-compassion. They highlight that partners of highly self-compassionate individuals actually record higher overall relationship satisfaction.
Okay, so the big picture is clear. Self-compassion is beneficial for relationships overall, even if it reduces that specific type of reactive jealousy display.
Exactly. The net effect is positive.
So that begs the question then. How do self-compassionate people achieve that higher relationship satisfaction if they might be displaying less of that intense reactive emotional signal that some partners interpret positively?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the suggestion from the sources is that self-compassionate people utilize alternative strategies for maintaining and enhancing their relationships, strategies that are ultimately more constructive and appealing in the long run.
Okay, what kind of alternative strategies?
The sources specifically mention that self-compassionate individuals are more likely to employ a cooperative conflict resolution style.
Cooperative conflict resolution, meaning?
Meaning, when disagreements or perceived threats arise, instead of resorting to intense emotional outbursts or maybe withdrawal, which reactive jealousy can fuel, or suspicion and blame, which anxious jealousy fuels, they approach conflict differently. They approach it with kindness towards themselves and their partner, seeking mutual understanding, looking for solutions together.
So less drama, more teamwork.
Essentially, yes. And other research indicates that this cooperative, constructive approach to handling disagreements makes someone a much more attractive and satisfying partner in the long run compared to relying on emotionally volatile or controlling reactions.
That makes total sense.
So while they might show less intense reactive jealousy, their overall way of navigating relationship challenges is healthier, more bonding, and that leads to greater satisfaction for both partners over time.
That paints a much more positive and, frankly, sustainable picture. It's about replacing potentially dramatic, maybe short-term signals with genuinely constructive, long-term relationship skills.
Exactly, building something solid.
The research also touches on the clinical relevance of these findings, right?
Yeah.
How they connect to existing therapeutic approaches for managing jealousy.
Yes, absolutely. The findings align with and really support established clinical strategies. For example, reactive jealousy, which is strongly characterized by that intense, immediate emotional pain,
Right.
is often addressed clinically using approaches focused on decision-based forgiveness. This involves helping the individual make a conscious choice to let go of resentment and anger related to the perceived transgression, even if the feelings linger for a bit.
Okay.
And our finding that self-compassion facilitates willingness to forgive directly supports this clinical path. Self-compassion makes that decision to forgive easier.
Got it. And what about for anxious jealousy?
Anxious jealousy, on the other hand, being rooted more in that suspicion, those irrational beliefs, the repetitive worrying, is typically treated with cognitive behavioral techniques, or CBT.
CBT. Okay.
These techniques focus on identifying and challenging the irrational thought patterns and the distrust that fuel the anxiety.
Making you question those automatic negative thoughts.
Exactly. Again, self-compassion is highly relevant here because it helps reduce self-criticism and general negative thinking, which are often deeply intertwined with the irrational beliefs that drive anxious jealousy.
So it sounds like self-compassion provides this fundamental internal resource that makes engaging with these clinical strategies easier, maybe more effective.
That's a great way to put it. It fosters the inner environment needed to practice forgiveness effectively, or to successfully challenge those problematic, ingrained thoughts.
It lays the groundwork.
Precisely. It lays the groundwork of self-acceptance and kindness that empowers you to do the difficult but necessary work of letting go emotionally or challenging those ingrained, fearful beliefs.
Okay, wow. We've spent a significant amount of time really dissecting jealousy, its different types, and how self-compassion offers such a powerful path to managing its disruptive impact. That's huge.
It really is.
But the sources also point us beyond just managing the negative emotions, don't they? They explore actively cultivating positive states, like gratitude and contentment, as different yet maybe equally powerful pathways to peace.
That's a crucial pivot in the material, yes.
Yeah.
It's not just about taming the monster, so to speak.
Right.
It's about actively nurturing, flourishing within yourselves.
Yeah.
Let's start with gratitude. How is it defined in these sources, and why is it specifically highlighted as an antidote, particularly to envy?
Yeah, gratitude. What is it, really?
Well, gratitude as described is more than just a fleeting thank you. It's about actively showing appreciation, really noticing and valuing the meaningful things in your life.
Okay.
This includes the big, obvious blessings, sure, but it also means consciously noticing and valuing the small, everyday positives.
Like what kind of small things?
Oh, a beautiful sunset, the taste of a really good meal, a moment of quiet, a kind word from a stranger, the fact that your body's working relatively well today. It's about intentionally shifting your attention toward the richness that is already present in your life.
Intentionally shifting attention. Okay. Why can that be so difficult sometimes? It sounds simple, but often feels hard to access consistently.
That's a key point the sources address. There are several obstacles. One big one is our natural negativity bias.
Negativity bias.
Yeah, our brains are kind of wired, for evolutionary reasons, to pay more attention to potential threats, problems, negative experiences, they stick with us longer, like Velcro. While positives can be like Teflon, they slide right off unless we actively focus on them.
Huh. Velcro for bad, Teflon for good. I've heard that.
It's a good analogy. Also, things like stress, depression, anxiety, they can make it incredibly challenging to perceive or appreciate positives. But a particularly potent obstacle highlighted in the sources, especially relevant to our discussion, is envy.
Ah, envy. Which we often confuse with jealousy, but it's distinct, right?
Exactly, the distinction made. Jealousy is about fearing losing something you have to a rival. Envy is about desiring something someone else possesses.
Okay, so how does envy block gratitude?
Well, envy is a direct counterpoint to gratitude because it focuses your attention outward, onto what others have that you perceive yourself as lacking.
Right, the comparison trap.
Totally. This external focus on perceived deficiencies effectively blinds you to your own fortunes, your own blessings, big or small. If you're constantly preoccupied with wanting someone else's job or car or relationship status or their perceived perfect life, you are fundamentally prevented from seeing and appreciating the value in your own life.
Makes gratitude impossible if you're focused on lack.
Incredibly difficult, yeah. Other related barriers mentioned include things like materialism, that constant desire for more stuff, cynicism, that distrustful view that discounts genuine kindness or good fortune, and narcissism, a sense of entitlement that makes you feel owed things rather than grateful for them.
Okay, so envy traps you in that state of perceived lack through constant comparison, while gratitude liberates you by focusing on the abundance, big or small, that already exists in your life. It's a direct countermeasure.
Exactly, a powerful one.
So if we put in the effort, if we work at cultivating gratitude, what are the actual benefits the sources describe? What's in it for us?
Oh, the benefits are remarkably broad and impactful. They touch on almost every aspect of well-being. On a purely physiological level,
Yeah.
practicing gratitude shifts your attention away from stress and negativity. This actually reduces stress hormones like cortisol.
Okay, less stress hormone. Good.
Very good. It's also associated with the release of feel-good neurochemicals like dopamine and serotonin, which naturally boost your mood. And over time, consistent gratitude practice can literally start to rewire your brain.
Rewire your brain, seriously.
Seriously, to be more inclined to notice and appreciate positives, it strengthens those neural pathways.
That's incredible. It can actually change your brain chemistry and structure.
It seems so. It's a powerful practice. Mentally, it's linked to significant improvements in mental health, including decreased symptoms of depression and anxiety.
Wow.
It can lead to better sleep quality, probably because your mind isn't racing with worries or resentments as much.
Makes sense. Less churning.
Exactly. It enhances focus and attention because you're training your mind to notice specific things. And it builds emotional resilience, helping you view challenges not just as problems, but maybe as opportunities for growth and learning.
Which ties back to that idea of reframing experiences we mentioned earlier.
Precisely. It can also boost self-esteem. The source gives a wonderful example. When someone expresses appreciation for you, or when you express appreciation for them, it reinforces your own value and your connection.
Oh.
Seeing your positive impact on others, or recognizing that others see value in you, which gratitude helps highlight, that internalizes your sense of worth. It's also linked to increased patience and self-control, fostering humility and wisdom.
Humility. How so?
By recognizing that you are part of a larger web of support and circumstance, rather than, solely responsible for everything good or bad in your life.
Okay, I see that connection.
Socially, gratitude practice is incredibly beneficial for relationships. Expressing sincere appreciation makes others feel seen, valued, cared for. That strengthens bonds.
Yeah, who doesn't like being appreciated?
Right. It also encourages reciprocity. It makes both the giver and the receiver more likely to engage in future pro-social or kind behaviors. It creates these positive upward spirals in relationships.
Nice.
And surprisingly, there are even physical health benefits reported. Things like lower blood pressure, reduced inflammation, better cardiovascular health, and an increased likelihood of engaging in other health-promoting behaviors like exercising or eating well.
Wow. The cumulative effect of intentionally practicing gratitude sounds truly transformative. It seems like it moves you towards peace and well-being on so many levels.
It really seems to.
So how do we actually do it? What are the practical steps or practices the sources suggest for cultivating this?
Okay, the sources offer several concrete practices.
Yeah.
One key one is, maybe unsurprisingly, mindfulness again.
Mindfulness is everywhere in this.
It really is foundational. Specifically, practicing mindfulness to slow down and savor moments using your senses. Really pay attention to the details of your surroundings. The taste and smell of your food, the feeling of a warm shower on your skin, the sound of birds outside your window.
Just noticing the little things.
Exactly. This grounds you in the present and trains your attention to notice the richness of everyday experience, those small blessings that are so easy to overlook when we're rushing or worrying. You can also practice mindful appreciation of familiar things by focusing on different aspects of them you might normally take for granted.
Like appreciating your favorite chair.
Why not? Or the technology that lets us have this conversation. Structured mindfulness or meditation that specifically includes focusing on things you are grateful for is also mentioned as very effective.
So mindfulness helps you become aware of what's already there to appreciate. It opens your eyes to it.
Precisely. Another widely recommended practice is keeping a gratitude journal.
Ah, yes, I've heard of this one.
It involves regularly, maybe daily, maybe weekly, whatever works for you, writing down a few things you are genuinely appreciative of. And they don't need to be monumental events.
Like what?
It could be really simple things. A good cup of coffee this morning, a funny meme someone sent you, a comfortable chair like you said, a moment of peace during a busy day, a supportive conversation you had. The act of writing it down forces you to identify, acknowledge, and really register these positives. Consistency seems more important than quantity here.
That journal sounds like you're actively building a record of the good things, kind of training your brain to look for them.
It absolutely is. You're reinforcing those pathways. Another powerful practice is writing notes or messages of appreciation to others.
Going beyond just saying thanks.
Yeah, go beyond a simple thank you. Detail specifically what they did and the positive impact it had on you. This strengthens your connection with them for sure, but it also deepens your own feeling of gratitude as you articulate it. Even just verbally expressing specific appreciation regularly can have a big impact.
So connecting that internal feeling to outward expression, reinforcing the social benefits we talked about.
Right. Builds those positive spirals. And finally, a really interesting one. Revisiting and reframing past difficult events.
Reframing difficult events for gratitude. How does that work?
It involves looking back at challenges, setbacks, maybe painful experiences, not to dwell on the pain, but to actively identify the lessons you learned from them. The resilience you discovered in yourself, perhaps unexpected positive turns that came later, or the personal growth that resulted from getting through it. Finding gratitude for the strength and wisdom gained from overcoming hardship, that's a profound level of appreciation.
That sounds advanced, but
Right.
powerful.
It can be. All these are powerful tools, and yes, they require conscious effort, they require practice, but it really does sound like you're building a gratitude muscle, doesn't it? Training your mind to spot the light even when it feels dark, directly countering the pull of envy and negativity.
They are indeed practices, like learning any new skill. And these practices, they naturally lead us to the final, perhaps the deepest concept the sources explore as a path to peace. Contentment. Contentment, I love that phrase the sources use, drawing from Bhutan Chokshay, translated as the knowledge of enough. Can you elaborate on what contentment means in this context? It sounds different.
Chokshay, or the knowledge of enough. It's described not as merely feeling happy like a temporary high, but as a fundamental state of unconditional wholeness that comes from within.
Unconditional wholeness.
Yeah, it's a feeling of being complete, intact, fundamentally okay, with no urgent or desperate desires beyond oneself needed to feel satisfied.
Okay, this sounds very different from the way we often think about striving for happiness, which is often about getting more, achieving more.
It is explicitly contrasted with those common conceptions of happiness in the sources. Happiness as often pursued, particularly in Western culture, is frequently tied to external inputs and reactions.
Like what?
Acquiring more money, achieving more success, getting more validation from others, buying more possessions. The sources actually call this the more strategy.
The more strategy. Okay.
The core problem with the more strategy, as they outline it, is that the happiness derived from external things is often fleeting. It doesn't last.
Right. The novelty wears off.
Exactly. The novelty wears off, circumstances inevitably change, and you quickly find yourself needing more again to feel happy. It's a constant chase, often an exhausting one.
Always looking outside yourself for that next temporary boost. A bit like a hamster wheel.
Exactly. Contentment, by contrast, is rooted in the enough strategy. It's sourced internally. It's a stable feeling of being whole and complete, regardless of external circumstances.
Regardless, even when things are tough.
Even then. The word contentment itself comes from roots, meaning held together, intact, whole. It's the realization that your fundamental well-being doesn't depend on what's happening outside of you. It comes from your relationship to what's happening and your internal state.
Held together. That speaks to a really powerful internal stability, doesn't it? Something that external events can't easily shake.
That's its immense power. Contentment offers a deep and enduring stability. You can genuinely feel content even when facing challenging external circumstances, loss, hardship, uncertainty.
How is that possible?
It's not about pretending everything is perfect. Yeah. It's about recognizing your fundamental wholeness, your capacity to be okay even amidst difficulty. It's a peace that resides within, accessible because, deep down, that you are already enough.
So it's not the absence of negative experience, but an underlying acceptance of what is built on a sense of internal sufficiency, like an anchor.
Precisely. An underlying, unconditional sense of okayness and completeness. It's a sustainable peace that external fluctuations cannot easily disturb because it's not dependent on them. It's discovered and cultivated internally.
Okay. How do we tap into this state? How do we cultivate contentment? It sounds wonderful, but maybe a bit abstract.
The sources, again, provide practical tips for this internal cultivation. And maybe unsurprisingly at this point, mindfulness appears once more as a key practice.
Mindfulness truly seems foundational, doesn't it, for managing the negative and cultivating the positive?
It really does seem to weave through all these paths. For cultivating contentment, the practice involves mindfulness with a specific focus. Pay attention to how it feels to be present.
How it feels.
Yeah. When you are simply noticing your breath or observing your surroundings without judgment, how does your body feel? Does it feel slightly more relaxed? Does your mind quieten down a bit? Do you feel a subtle sense of peace, maybe a reduction in internal pressure or that feeling of neediness? Do you feel more resourced, maybe a sense that things are simply okay in this moment, just as they are? That subtle feeling of ease, of no longer needing something external to feel complete in this moment, that's contentment showing up.
Okay. So the practice is to become attuned to that feeling and cultivate it.
Exactly. Noticing and nurturing that subtle sense of being settled, of okayness. What other practices help build contentment?
Yeah, what else?
Another crucial practice mentioned is identifying your well-being contingencies.
Well-being contingencies. What are those?
These are the external factors, the conditions, the achievements that you have consciously or unconsciously come to believe are required for you to feel truly complete or happy or okay.
Can you give some examples?
Sure, it could be beliefs like, I can only be content when I have X amount of money in the bank, or I'll finally be happy when I get that specific job title, or my life will be complete when my kids achieve Y. I need validation from these specific people to feel worthy. I absolutely must own Z material item to feel successful.
Okay, so recognizing the external benchmarks or conditions we've attached our sense of worth or completeness to.
Exactly. The analysis here is that these contingencies create unhealthy attachments. They make your well-being dependent on external factors that are often outside of your direct control.
Right. Setting yourself up for disappointment.
And they reinforce the underlying idea that you are not enough right now, that you have to get or achieve something else out there to finally be okay.
So what's the practice? Just noticing them?
Noticing them is the first step. The practice involves reflecting on these contingencies, identifying them clearly, maybe even writing them down, and then challenging the belief that you absolutely must wait for them to feel okay. It's about asking yourself honestly, can I find a way to feel whole and complete right now, independent of these external conditions?
Wow.
It's a practice of taking ownership of your internal state instead of outsourcing it to the unpredictable external world.
That's a powerful exercise, really confronting that more strategy head on and turning inward instead. What's the final practice mentioned for cultivating contentment?
The final practice highlighted is perhaps the most challenging for many, but it's deeply integrated with contentment. Radically accepting all emotions.
Radically accepting even the really difficult ones, like jealousy or intense sadness.
Even those. The sources frame this by viewing emotions the whole spectrum, comfortable and uncomfortable, as temporary phenomena, like waves in the ocean or visitors passing through. They arise, they crest, and they eventually pass away if we let them.
Okay.
The problem, the sources suggest, isn't usually the emotions themselves, it's the unhealthy relationship we often develop with them.
What kind of unhealthy relationship?
Like clinging desperately to the pleasant ones, trying to make them stay forever, and fiercely resisting, pushing away, or judging the unpleasant ones, trying to get rid of them immediately.
So instead of trying to fix or get rid of difficult feelings like jealousy or sadness, the idea is to learn to just let them be there without fighting them.
Essentially, yes. Radical acceptance means choosing to allow all feelings to be present without needing to change them, fight them, or be consumed by them. Now, this might sound counterintuitive or even passive, especially with intense feelings like the ones associated with jealousy or fear.
Yeah, it kind of does.
But the sources present it as an underlying acceptance of the full, messy, beautiful human experience. Contentment, in this view, isn't the absence of negative emotions. It's the underlying, unconditional acceptance of the imperfect reality of being human. Realizing that you are enough as you are, even when difficult feelings are flowing through you.
So applying this to jealousy or envy then, it means accepting the feeling of jealousy or envy might arise acknowledging that pang, that discomfort.
Yes.
But not getting lost in it, not letting it define your entire state or dictate your actions. You allow the feeling to be present without becoming the feeling itself.
Precisely. You observe it, perhaps with that self-compassionate kindness and mindfulness we discussed earlier, but you don't resist it to the point where you amplify it, nor do you get carried away by its story. That fundamental acceptance of the feeling's presence without needing it to be different is presented as a significant step towards internal peace.
Okay. Wow. Let's try and bring all of these threads together now. We started with that really uncomfortable turmoil of jealousy and envy, looking at their nature. We then explored how self-compassion offers this powerful internal buffer and regulation strategy, how it helps manage both the emotional impact of reactive jealousy and the cognitive worry of anxious jealousy.
Partially through facilitating forgiveness for the reactive type.
Right. And directly through self-kindness and mindfulness for both, especially the anxious type.
Exactly.
Then we shifted focus to actively cultivating positive states. Gratitude as a way to counter envy by focusing on existing abundance.
Shifting the focus inward.
And contentment, providing that stable internal anchor by teaching us the knowledge of enough. How do these three key concepts, self-compassion, gratitude, contentment, how do they interrelate and form a cohesive path towards greater peace?
Well, they really form a synergistic approach, don't they? A comprehensive toolkit for navigating our often tricky emotional landscape. Self-compassion provides the essential foundation.
The starting point.
Yeah, the foundation of kindness, understanding, and acceptance toward yourself. That's particularly crucial when those vulnerable, painful feelings like jealousy or insecurity inevitably arise. It's the inner support system that allows you to approach difficult emotions without adding that extra layer of harsh self-judgment, which just makes everything worse.
Okay, so self-compassion is where you start the internal shift.
It seems like the bedrock, yes. Gratitude then provides an active, outward-looking practice or inward-looking, appreciating what you have that directly counteracts the comparative, lack-focused nature of envy. By consistently practicing appreciation for what is present in your life, you train your attention away from what others have and towards the inherent value and richness already within your own experience. It literally reshapes your perspective over time.
So it shifts the gaze from wanting what's out there to valuing what's in here.
Exactly. Beautifully put. And contentment, then, provides the deepest, most stable internal anchor. It's that profound understanding and, importantly, the felt sense that you are fundamentally whole and enough, just as you are, independent of external circumstances, comparisons, or potential threats to your relationships or status.
So it makes those external triggers less powerful.
It makes them less powerful, yes, less capable of truly destabilizing your inner state because your sense of worth and peace isn't contingent upon them anymore. It comes from within.
Okay, so let me see if I can synthesize this. When those turbulent feelings like jealousy or envy surface, self-compassion helps you meet them with kindness instead of judgment. Gratitude helps you counter the pull of envy by actively focusing on the richness and value in your own life.
Shifting perspective.
And contentment provides the deep underlying stability of knowing you are already complete, which makes external comparisons and threats lose their power over your sense of self.
That synthesizes it beautifully. And the truly empowering message running through all these sources is that none of these self-compassion, gratitude, contentment, none of them are fixed traits that you either possess or you don't.
They're not personality types?
No. They are skills. They are practices that can be intentionally cultivated through conscious effort, through the kinds of practices we've discussed today.
Like mindfulness, journaling, expressing appreciation, reframing challenges.
Identifying those dependencies on external contingencies, practicing radical acceptance of your emotional experience, all of those.
This deep dive really does offer a comprehensive map, doesn't it? From being tossed about by the intense emotions of jealousy and envy to finding a more stable, resilient, and fundamentally peaceful inner state. one built on kindness, appreciation, and that quiet, profound knowledge that you are already enough.
It's a journey, really. A journey that shifts the battleground, if you will, from the external world of comparison and threat to the internal world of self-acceptance, gratitude, and recognizing sufficiency.
So as we draw this deep dive to a close, let's maybe reflect on the core lesson woven through these sources. It seems that truly managing jealousy and finding peace involves, yes, understanding the powerful, often disruptive nature of these emotions.
You have to understand them first.
Right, but also actively and intentionally cultivating kindness and acceptance towards yourself, consistently appreciating the value and richness already present in your life, and ultimately realizing and embracing the profound truth that enough is a state that resides within you, accessible right now.
It's a fundamental reorientation, isn't it? From that strategy of endlessly chasing more outside ourselves to a strategy of recognizing the sufficiency that is already here within.
And that leaves us with a final question, maybe something for you, the listener, to carry forward, building on that idea of contentment as the knowledge of enough. If authentic, lasting peace really comes from this internal sense of sufficiency, this recognition of being fundamentally complete just as you are, how much of our energy are we perhaps currently spending, maybe unknowingly chasing more outside ourselves?
Yeah. More validation, more possessions, more external markers of success or desirability, and what might fundamentally shift in our lives, in our relationships, in our overall sense of peace, if we consciously chose to redirect even a fraction of that energy inward, towards cultivating that inherent sense of enoughness that these sources suggest is already waiting within us.
That is a truly powerful thought to ponder, isn't it? And maybe explore in your own experience.
Something to sit with, definitely. Well, we truly appreciate you bringing these sources to us and joining us for this deep dive into managing jealousy and finding contentment.
It's been a pleasure to explore them. I hope you, the listener, found value in unpacking these concepts and practices. Explore them, experiment with them, and discover their power in your own life. Thank you for the opportunity.